Do you ever feel like you're searching for something more, a deeper purpose in a world that often feels superficial and meaningless? What if the answers you've been given, the traditional sources of comfort and meaning, no longer satisfy you? What if I told you that the death of traditional meaning, the death of God, could be the key to unlocking your own authentic power and creating a life of profound significance? This seemingly bleak pronouncement, God is dead, uttered by the 19th century philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, is not a celebration of atheism, but a diagnosis of a profound cultural shift, a shift that continues to resonate and perhaps even intensify in our own time. What Nietzsche meant by God is dead was not simply that people were no longer believing in a literal deity. It was a far more radical observation. He saw the decline of the entire Judeo-Christian moral framework, the crumbling of the foundations upon which Western civilization had been built for centuries. With the rise of science, the Enlightenment's emphasis on reason, and the increasing secularization of society, the old certainties, the preordained values, and the promise of eternal salvation were fading away. This created a void, an existential vacuum. How do we find meaning in a world without a divine creator, without a cosmic plan, without inherent purpose? How do we navigate the abyss of nihilism, the belief that life is ultimately meaningless? This isn't just a philosophical problem confined to dusty textbooks. It's a deeply personal and increasingly widespread experience. Think about the rising rates of anxiety and depression, the pervasive sense of alienation, and the constant search for identity and belonging in a world that often feels fragmented and disconnected. Friedrich Nietzsche, a German philosopher, philologist, cultural critic, composer, and poet, grappled with these questions in the late 19th century, a time of immense social and intellectual upheaval, much like our own. He saw the writing on the wall, the impending crisis of meaning, and he offered a radical and often unsettling response. But by understanding Nietzsche's philosophy, we can find powerful tools and insights to navigate this crisis, to confront the void, and to create a fulfilling and authentic life, even in the absence of traditional sources of meaning. We'll uncover the roots of nihilism, learn how to escape its suffocating grip, discover the true meaning of the will to power not as a desire for domination, but as a drive for self-mystery, and explore the concept of the Übermensch, not as a superhuman elite, but as a model for continuous self-overcoming. We'll also explore the challenging, yet ultimately liberating idea of eternal recurrence as a tool for self-evaluation. And finally, we will consider the most profound concept of all, amor fati, loving one's fate. This is a radical acceptance of life, even its suffering, and it forms the cornerstone of a truly empowered existence. Now, you might be thinking, this sounds incredibly bleak. Isn't Nietzsche just a pessimist, a prophet of doom and gloom? It's true that his philosophy can be challenging, even disturbing. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world. But the search for meaning and purpose is rarely easy. It often involves questioning our most deeply held beliefs, facing our fears, and grappling with existential uncertainty. It's a shared struggle, a deeply human experience to wrestle with these questions, to feel lost or disconnected, to doubt the values we've inherited. It is okay to question. It's okay to grapple, and Nietzsche's work is not about giving easy answers. It's about providing a framework for navigating the complexities of existence and for forging our own path, even if it means challenging the foundations upon which society itself sits. So, let's delve deeper into what Nietzsche really meant by this earth-shattering statement. God is dead. But with this shattering realization, with the death of God and the collapse of traditional values, comes an immediate danger, the gaping maw of nihilism. The loss of a preordained moral framework, the absence of a divine architect, leaves a terrifying void. And nihilism is the seductive whisper that invites us to fall into that void, to embrace the belief that life is inherently meaningless, that all values are baseless, and that nothing truly matters. This is the abyss Nietzsche warned us about. It's the feeling of disorientation, the sense of being adrift in a cosmic ocean without a compass or a map. Now it's crucial to understand that nihilism isn't a monolithic entity. It manifests in different forms. We can distinguish between passive nihilism, which is the focus of this section, and active nihilism, which we'll touch upon later. Passive nihilism is the state of resignation, the surrender to despair. It's the belief that nothing has inherent value, leading to apathy, inaction, and a profound sense of emptiness. It's the quiet acceptance that all striving is futile, that all efforts are ultimately pointless. Think of it as an existential paralysis, a state of being trapped in a meaningless existence, unable to find any reason to engage with life or to even get out of bed. But how does this state of being present itself? What does passive nihilism look like in the flesh and blood of real, or at least realistic, human experiences? For that answer, we need to go no further than the pages of Fyodor Dostoevsky's haunting novels. Dostoevsky, a contemporary of Nietzsche, though they likely never read each other's work, explored the depths of the human psyche in a way that few others have. His characters grapple with the loss of faith, the burden of freedom, and the devastating consequences of moral nihilism. Consider the underground man in Notes from Underground. He's a bitter, isolated, and self-loathing individual who rejects all societal norms and values. He sees through the hypocrisy and superficiality of the world, but he offers no alternative, no positive vision. He's trapped in a cycle of self-destruction and spite, unable to find any meaning or purpose in his existence. He is the embodiment of passive nihilism, a man consumed by resentment and despair. He is aware of beauty, truth, and power, but because of his nihilistic beliefs, he not only rejects them, but actively seeks their opposite. Then there's Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment. Driven by a warped sense of intellectual superiority and a belief that he is above conventional morality, he commits murder. He believes that he, as an extraordinary individual, is not bound by the same rules as ordinary people. He imagines, much like the later misinterpretations of Nietzsche, that he is some kind of Superman, a being beyond good and evil. But his actions lead him not to freedom and power, but to guilt, paranoia, and ultimately, spiritual ruin. His nihilistic delusion, initially couched in the possibility of a greater good, shatters against the reality of his crime, isolating him in a prison of his own making. He sought to transcend morality, but instead became enslaved by his own actions. These are not merely fictional constructs. These are portraits of the human soul in the throes of an existential crisis, a crisis brought on by the very death of God that Nietzsche proclaimed. But here's what's so terrifying, and what Dostoevsky so masterfully portrays: the seductive allure of nihilism. It is the twisted belief that one can find freedom in the absence of all values. These characters aren't simply evil. They're lost, desperately seeking something to fill the void left by the collapse of meaning. The dangers of passive nihilism are not abstract philosophical concepts. They are the very real consequences of a life devoid of purpose. Apathy, loss of motivation, a descent into despair, and in extreme cases, self-destructive behavior. Have you ever felt that sense of meaninglessness, that creeping doubt that whispers, "What's the point?" Have you ever questioned the value of striving, the pursuit of goals, the very fabric of existence? Have you ever looked out at the vastness of the universe and felt utterly insignificant, a speck of dust in an indifferent cosmos? These are the seductive whispers of nihilism, the siren song of the abyss. Long-term, unchecked nihilistic thoughts create a dangerous breeding ground for a number of psychological consequences. Chronic feelings of emptiness, a pervasive lack of motivation, increased risk of depression and anxiety, and even an inclination towards self-destructive behaviors, as seen in the Dostoevskian personalities, all become very real dangers. The weight of meaninglessness can crush the human spirit, leaving one adrift, unable to find purchase in the world. This leads many people to search for quick and ultimately destructive means to alleviate the symptoms without addressing the core issue. But Nietzsche, while acknowledging the profound threat of nihilism, did not succumb to it. He saw it not as an end point but as a necessary stage, a challenge to be overcome. He offered a powerful alternative, a way to confront the void and emerge stronger, more resilient and more authentically you. This brings us to his revolutionary and often misunderstood concept of the will to power. But before we examine it, consider this: Dostoevsky's characters, and perhaps many of us at times, become ensnared in a passive, destructive state. What if they and we had a different tool, a different framework for navigating the absence of inherent meaning? That is precisely what Nietzsche offers. So, what is the will to power? It's frequently and dangerously misinterpreted as a crude desire for domination, a lust for power over others. This is a gross simplification, a distortion of Nietzsche's profound insight. The will to power is not about conquering nations or subjugating individuals. It's not about becoming a tyrant or a dictator. In fact, that interpretation is almost the opposite of what Nietzsche intended. The will to power is, at its core, the fundamental drive within each individual to overcome limitations, to grow, to expand, to become the best possible version of oneself. It's an internal force, a striving for self-mastery, not external domination. Think of it as the inherent life force, the creative energy that propels us to learn, to adapt, to create, and to evolve. It's the impulse to overcome challenges, to push beyond our comfort zones, and to constantly strive for something more. It's not about controlling others. It's about mastering oneself. It's about channeling one's inner drives, one's passions, one's talents towards growth, self-expression, and the creation of meaning. It's the artist striving to create a masterpiece, the scientist pushing the boundaries of knowledge, the athlete pushing their physical limits, or even, in a much simpler sense, the individual who decides to get up and run a mile in the morning, overcoming their inertia. It's the drive to improve and surpass one's past self. It is a perpetual striving, a journey of becoming, a continuous process of self-overcoming. But let's examine the differences in practice, the vital difference between the will to power as self-mastery versus the twisted, destructive version, the will to domination. Consider the contrast between two historical figures. On one hand, you have someone like Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher. He wielded immense power, yet he focused on self-discipline, on cultivating virtue, on living in accordance with reason and nature. He used his position not for personal aggrandizement, but for the betterment of his people. He sought to master his own emotions, his own impulses, his own reactions to the world. He embodied the will to power as internal mastery. Now, contrast him with someone like Adolf Hitler, who twisted Nietzsche's ideas, or more accurately, his sister did, after Nietzsche became incapacitated, to justify a horrific ideology of racial supremacy and world domination. Hitler sought power over others, not power over himself. He used his influence to unleash chaos, destruction, and unimaginable suffering. He represents the perversion of the will to power, the dangerous distortion of a profound philosophical concept. He wasn't engaged in any form of self-improvement. Instead, he was seeking to force his will on others. The difference is crucial. The will to power, properly understood, is a life-affirming force. It's the engine of creativity, innovation, and personal growth. It's the drive to become a better version of oneself, to contribute something meaningful to the world, to leave a positive mark on existence. It allows individuals to craft and shape their own values and find, or rather, create meaning in a world without inherent purpose. It is the very antidote to the poison of passive nihilism. It is the realization that, while the universe may be indifferent, you are not. You have the power to shape your own destiny, to create your own meaning, to live a life of purpose and significance. It is about taking the reins of your own existence. Think about it. How can you channel your own inner drives, your own unique talents and passions, to create a life that is truly meaningful to you, a life that resonates with your deepest values, regardless of external validation or societal expectations? How can you use the will to power to overcome your own limitations, to break free from self-imposed constraints, and to become the author of your own story? It's not about conforming to external pressures. It's about cultivating your inner strength, your inner resilience, your inner creativity. It's an ongoing project, not a simple answer, that allows one to live authentically to create. The will to power is not an end in itself, but a path. It's the driving force behind a process of continuous self-improvement, the consistent and enthusiastic embracing of challenges as opportunities for growth. It's the engine that powers what Nietzsche called the Übermensch. And here's where another potential misunderstanding lies, one that we will dismantle completely in the next section. The Übermensch is often wrongly seen as some sort of master race, a superior breed of human being. Nothing could be further from the truth. 1 Übermensch premise introduction. Start by directly refuting the master race misconception. Connect it to the will to power. 2 Übermensch concept development. Define the qualities of the Übermensch: creativity, courage, self-discipline, etc. Emphasize it's a process. 3 Übermensch evidence and elaboration. Provide examples of individuals exhibiting aspects of these qualities: artists, thinkers, leaders. Importantly, avoid claiming anyone is a perfect Übermensch. 4 Übermensch analysis and implication. Discuss practical steps viewers can take to cultivate these qualities. Use questions to engage them directly. 5 Übermensch transition. Introduce eternal recurrence as a thought experiment embraced by the Übermensch. 6 Eternal recurrence premise introduction. Position it as the ultimate test of self-acceptance. 7 Eternal recurrence concept development. Explain the concept, emphasizing its hypothetical nature. 8 Eternal recurrence evidence and elaboration. Guide viewers through the thought experiment. Use vivid imagery. 9 Eternal recurrence analysis and implication. Connect it to practical decision-making. Link to Amor Fati. 10 Eternal recurrence transition. Introduce death of God and other civilizations, creating a bridge to the final section and overall video concept. /11 The phrase "think about it" is used very effectively in the examples. I must be sure to use this prompt at least once. I will now craft the content, focusing on maintaining the style, pacing, and engagement techniques observed in the examples. /thinking the Übermensch is often wrongly seen as some sort of master race, a superior breed of human being. Nothing could be further from the truth. This dangerous misinterpretation, often fueled by superficial readings and, sadly, exploited by ideologies of hate, completely misses the profound depth of Nietzsche's concept. The Übermensch is not about genetic superiority, physical prowess, or any form of domination over others. It's not about creating a hierarchical society where a select few rule over the masses. Instead, it's the ultimate expression of the will to power, as we just discussed, that internal drive towards self-mastery, towards constantly overcoming one's limitations. It is an ideal, a model for continuous self-improvement, a striving to become the best possible version of oneself, regardless of external circumstances or societal expectations. The Übermensch, therefore, is not a fixed state of being but a process, a journey of perpetual becoming. It's about cultivating specific qualities, nurturing inner strengths, and embracing the inherent challenges of existence. What are these qualities? First and foremost, creativity. The Übermensch is a creator of values, a shaper of meaning, an artist of life. They don't passively accept the values imposed upon them by society or tradition. They actively create their own, based on their own unique experiences and insights. Secondly, courage. The Übermensch doesn't shy away from difficulty, from suffering, from the harsh realities of existence. They face life head-on, embracing challenges as opportunities for growth and self-discovery. They possess the courage to question, to challenge, to defy conventional wisdom, and to forge their own path, even when it's unpopular or difficult. Thirdly, self-discipline. The Übermensch is a master of their own impulses, their own desires, their own emotions. They don't let themselves be ruled by fleeting whims or external pressures. They cultivate inner strength, resilience, and the ability to delay gratification in pursuit of their long-term goals. They are in complete command of their internal world. This is an individual who embraces radical independence. The Übermensch is not a follower. They are a leader, at least of their own life. They don't seek validation from others. They find it within themselves. They are autonomous, self-reliant, and free from the shackles of conformity. They listen to no one's tune but their own. It's a constant, lifelong process of self-cultivation, of striving to embody these qualities, to live authentically, to create a life of meaning and purpose. It's not about achieving perfection, but about the unending pursuit of it. But who, if anyone, exemplifies these traits, these aspects of the Übermensch? It's crucial to understand that no single individual perfectly embodies the entirety of the Übermensch ideal. It's a model, an aspiration, not a concrete reality. However, we can find glimpses, fragments of these qualities in various individuals throughout history. Consider artists like Michelangelo, who poured his soul into his creations, pushing the boundaries of artistic expression, or scientists like Marie Curie, who defied societal expectations and dedicated her life to the pursuit of knowledge, even at great personal risk. Think of leaders like Nelson Mandela, who demonstrated extraordinary courage and resilience in the face of injustice, or innovators like Steve Jobs, who challenged conventional thinking and revolutionized the way we interact with technology. These individuals in their respective fields displayed aspects of the Übermensch: the creativity, the courage, the self-discipline, the unwavering commitment to their vision. They are not Übermenschen, to be clear, but they embody elements of the ideal, providing inspiration and a glimpse into the potential that lies within each of us. The key here is to focus on the qualities, not on declaring any one person as the perfect embodiment, because such a perfect embodiment does not exist. So, how can you, in your own life, cultivate these qualities? How can you begin to walk the path of self-overcoming, to embrace the challenge of becoming your best self? First, identify your own limiting beliefs, those internal narratives that hold you back, that tell you you're not good enough, not strong enough, not capable enough. Challenge those beliefs. Question their validity. Replace them with empowering beliefs that support your growth and self-discovery. Secondly, step outside your comfort zone. Embrace new experiences, even if they're uncomfortable or challenging. Discomfort is often a sign of growth, a signal that you're pushing your boundaries and expanding your potential. Third, cultivate self-discipline. Start small. Set achievable goals and commit to them. Develop habits that support your long-term vision. Learn to delay gratification and to resist the temptation of instant pleasure in favor of pursuing something more meaningful, something that truly resonates with your deeper values. And finally, nurture your own unique talents and passions. What are you truly passionate about? What brings you joy, fulfillment, a sense of purpose? Cultivate those passions. Express your creativity. Share your gifts with the world. These are not mere suggestions. They are practical steps, grounded in Nietzsche's philosophy, towards taking ownership of your existence? Have you identified those limiting beliefs that whisper doubts in your ear? Have you pinpointed the areas where you tend to stay within the confines of your comfort zone? What small but significant steps can you take today to begin cultivating greater self-discipline and to tap into your creative potential? But how can we truly know if we are living in accordance with our will to power, if we are striving to become our best selves? How can we evaluate our choices, our actions, our very existence, in a way that aligns with this radical ideal of self-overcoming? Nietzsche offered a powerful and perhaps terrifying thought experiment: eternal recurrence. This is not a metaphysical claim about the structure of the universe. It's a psychological tool, a crucible for self-evaluation. It is the ultimate test. Imagine for a moment that every single moment of your life, every joy, every sorrow, every triumph, every failure, every decision, every action will be repeated exactly as it is for all eternity. You will relive your life not just once, but countless times with no variation, no escape, no chance to change anything. This is not reincarnation, where you come back as a different being in a different life. This is the exact same life, replayed endlessly in every minute detail. This is not a prediction of the future. It's a challenge to confront the present. It's a thought experiment designed to force us to confront the question: are we living a life we would be willing to relive, unchanged for all eternity? It's about evaluating the choices you are making now, the actions you are taking now, the person you are becoming now. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the feeling of the sun on your skin, the taste of your favorite food, the sound of laughter, the embrace of a loved one. Now, imagine reliving those moments exactly as they are for all eternity, but don't stop there. Imagine also the moments of pain, of regret, of disappointment, of heartbreak. Imagine reliving your mistakes, your failures, your deepest insecurities over and over again without end. Imagine the arguments, the missed opportunities, the words you wish you could take back, the things you wish you had done differently. Imagine all of it, the good and the bad, the beautiful and the ugly, replaying in an infinite loop. How does that make you feel? What emotions arise? Do you feel a sense of joy, of affirmation, of acceptance? Or do you feel a sense of dread, of regret, of despair? The intensity of this thought experiment is intentional. It is designed to cut through the illusions, the self-deceptions, the superficial distractions that often cloud our judgment and prevent us from truly confronting the reality of our choices. The power of eternal recurrence lies in its ability to reveal what truly matters to us. It forces us to confront our values, our priorities, our deepest desires. It challenges us to make choices that are aligned with our authentic selves, to live a life that we can embrace fully, without reservation, without regret. If the thought of reliving your life exactly as it is fills you with dread, then perhaps it's time to make some changes. Perhaps it's time to reevaluate your priorities, to pursue your passions, to cultivate your inner strength, to become the person you truly want to be. Think about it. Are you prioritizing the things that truly matter to you? Are you spending your time and energy on activities that bring you joy, fulfillment, and a sense of purpose? Are you nurturing your relationships, cultivating your talents, and living in accordance with your deepest values? Or are you caught up in the pursuit of superficial goals, external validation, and fleeting pleasures? Eternal recurrence connects directly to another of Nietzsche's core concepts, amor fati, or love of fate. It's not just about accepting our fate, but embracing it, loving it, seeing it as necessary, as an integral part of who we are. The Übermensch, the individual striving for self-overcoming, would not shrink from eternal recurrence. They would embrace it, seeing it as the ultimate affirmation of life, in all its complexity, all its beauty, and all its suffering. While Nietzsche's concept of God is dead may seem particularly tied to Western thought, the underlying crisis of meaning, the collapse of traditional value systems, is far more universal than many people realize. Other civilizations across different eras and continents have undergone similar transitions, facing their own death of God moments with strikingly parallel consequences. Let's take a brief but illuminating look. But how can we truly live with the implications of eternal recurrence, with the weight of knowing that every moment, every joy, and every pain will be repeated infinitely? How do we not just accept our fate, but truly embrace it? Nietzsche offers a powerful, transformative concept: amor fati, the love of fate. This isn't about passively resigning ourselves to whatever happens, a fatalistic shrug of the shoulders in the face of life's challenges. It's not about denying the existence of suffering or pretending that everything is always wonderful. Far from it. Amor fati is a radical affirmation of everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen in our lives, seeing it all as necessary, as interconnected, as contributing to the unique tapestry of our existence. What this means is embracing not only the triumphs and the joys, but also the setbacks, the heartbreaks, the mistakes, and the suffering. It's about recognizing that these difficult experiences are not aberrations, not deviations from the good life, but integral parts of it. In other words, amor fati is the understanding that every experience, no matter how painful or challenging, contributes to our growth, our understanding, our overall becoming. It's about viewing our lives not as a series of random events, but as a unified whole, a story that is unfolding with its own internal logic, its own unique beauty, even amidst the chaos and the pain. It's seeing every event, every person, every circumstance as a necessary thread in the grand tapestry of our being. It's about integrating even the darkest moments into our self-narrative, finding meaning not despite the suffering, but because of it. Amor fati is not about approving of everything that happens, but about recognizing its necessity within the larger context of our lives and the universe. It's about finding the good, the lesson, the growth potential in every situation. Consider the example of Nelson Mandela. After spending 27 years in prison for his fight against apartheid, he emerged not with bitterness or resentment, but with a commitment to reconciliation and forgiveness. He didn't deny the injustice of his imprisonment, the suffering he endured, but he integrated it into his larger narrative, using it as fuel for his mission to create a more just and equitable society. He chose to see his suffering not as a reason for despair, but as a catalyst for transformation. Or consider Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. In his book, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl describes his experiences in Auschwitz and other concentration camps. He witnessed unimaginable horrors, endured unspeakable suffering, but he found meaning even in the midst of that darkness. He developed logotherapy, a form of psychotherapy based on the idea that the primary human drive is not pleasure, as Freud believed, but the search for meaning. Frankl's experience is a powerful testament to the human capacity to find meaning even in the face of unimaginable suffering. He didn't love the suffering itself, but he loved the fact that he could find meaning within it, that he could choose his response, that he could retain his inner freedom even when his external freedom was taken away. Compare this to someone who might have emerged from the same circumstances full of rage and a desire for revenge. While understandable, this is not amor fati. So, how can you apply amor fati to your own life, to the challenges you are facing right now? How can you begin to cultivate this mindset of radical acceptance and even love for your fate? One powerful strategy is to reframe challenges as opportunities for growth. Instead of viewing setbacks as failures, see them as learning experiences, as chances to develop resilience, to gain new insights, to become stronger and wiser. Every obstacle, every difficulty, is a chance to practice amor fati, to demonstrate your capacity to find meaning and purpose even in the face of adversity. Another key practice is gratitude. Cultivate a sense of appreciation for all aspects of your life, not just the pleasant ones. Find the good, even in the difficult moments. Recognize the lessons you've learned, the strength you've gained, the ways in which you've grown as a result of your challenges. And perhaps most importantly, focus on what you can control: your responses, your attitudes, your choices. You may not be able to control external events, but you can always control how you choose to interpret them, how you choose to respond to them. This is the essence of Amor Fati, taking ownership of your inner world, even when the outer world is chaotic and unpredictable. How might your perspective on your current struggles shift if you viewed them not as punishments or roadblocks, but as integral parts of your unique journey? What if you saw every challenge as an opportunity to practice resilience, to cultivate inner strength, to deepen your understanding of yourself and the world? Nietzsche's God is Dead is often interpreted as a uniquely Western, even uniquely modern, crisis of meaning. The decline of traditional religious belief, the rise of scientific rationalism, the shattering of the old certainties, these are often seen as specific to Western civilization in the modern era. But the shattering of unifying principles, the resulting search for new meaning, this existential disorientation, is far more widespread, far more deeply rooted in the human experience. It transcends cultures and historical periods. Let's explore that. The death of God, in its broader sense, is not just about the decline of a specific religious belief system. It's about the loss of any central, unifying myth, any overarching narrative that provides a sense of meaning, purpose, and coherence to a society or an individual. It's about the shattering of the core beliefs that hold a culture together, that provide a shared understanding of the world and our place within it. This shattering can manifest in many ways: the collapse of an empire, the overthrow of a traditional social order, the encounter with a radically different culture, or the rise of new scientific or philosophical ideas that challenge existing beliefs. And it can be every bit as devastating as the actual death of a worshipped god. Consider ancient Egypt. For thousands of years, Egyptian civilization was built on a complex polytheistic religion, with a pantheon of gods and goddesses who controlled every aspect of life and death. The pharaoh was seen as a divine ruler, an intermediary between the gods and the people. But during the reign of Akhenaten in the 14th century BCE, this entire system was challenged. Akhenaten attempted to replace the traditional polytheistic religion with a monotheistic cult centered on the Aten, the sun disk. He closed down the temples of the old gods, suppressed their worship, and even built a new capital city, Akhetaten, modern-day Amarna, dedicated to the Aten. This was a radical, revolutionary act, a death of God moment for Egyptian society. It shattered the traditional worldview, disrupted the established social order, and led to a period of upheaval and instability. While Akhenaten's reforms were ultimately reversed after his death, the episode reveals the profound impact of challenging a society's core beliefs. Or consider the ancient Sumerians. Their civilization, one of the oldest in the world, flourished in Mesopotamia for centuries. They developed a complex system of writing, mathematics, and astronomy, and they built impressive cities and temples dedicated to their gods. But after a series of invasions and conquests, culminating in the fall of the third dynasty of Ur around 2000 BCE, Sumerian civilization began to decline. Their gods, once seen as all-powerful protectors, seemed to have failed them. This led to a questioning of their traditional beliefs, a loss of faith in the old order, and a search for new explanations for the suffering and chaos they were experiencing. This was a different kind of death of God, not a deliberate rejection of the gods, but a gradual erosion of faith in their power and benevolence, brought about by historical circumstances. This wasn't a philosophical pronouncement, but a lived experience of loss and disorientation. What lessons can we learn from these and other historical examples of gods dying, about how societies and individuals cope with the loss of traditional belief systems? How do they find new sources of meaning and purpose, new ways to understand their place in the world? The parallels with Nietzsche's concept are striking, but so are the differences. Nietzsche focused on the individual's responsibility to create their own values in the absence of God. But in many of these historical examples, the response was more collective, a societal effort to find new unifying principles, new forms of social cohesion. Sometimes, this involved the rise of new religious or philosophical systems, as in the case of Akhenaten's reforms. Other times, it involved a gradual adaptation to new circumstances, a slow process of cultural transformation. The response to the death of God has varied immensely. The need for some kind of meaning seems to be a constant. What these examples and many others across many other belief systems show is the enduring human need for meaning, for a sense of purpose, for a framework that can make sense of the world and our place within it. The search for meaning is not unique to the modern West. It's a fundamental aspect of the human condition, a recurring theme throughout history and across cultures. They also indicate the potential universality of Nietzsche's solutions. However, is the will to power a fundamental human drive regardless of societal structure? We've journeyed through Nietzsche's challenging but ultimately empowering philosophy from the abyss of nihilism, recognizing the death of God and the potential for meaninglessness, to the heights of self-overcoming, embracing the will to power, striving to become the Übermensch, accepting our fate through amor fati, and looking at the universality of these challenges. We've faced the harsh realities of existence, but we've also discovered the tools to create our own meaning, to forge our own values, to live a life of purpose and fulfillment, even in a world without preordained answers. Now, let's bring it all together. Let's synthesize these ideas and consider how we can apply them to create that meaningful life in our own world without preordained answers. We've journeyed through Nietzsche's challenging but ultimately empowering philosophy from the abyss of nihilism, recognizing the death of God and the potential for meaninglessness, to the heights of self-overcoming, embracing the will to power, striving to become the Übermensch, accepting our fate through amor fati, and looking at the universality of these challenges. We've faced the harsh realities of existence, but we've also discovered the tools to create our own meaning, to forge our own values, to live a life of purpose and fulfillment, even in a world without preordained answers. Now, let's bring it all together. Let's synthesize these ideas and consider how we can apply them to create that meaningful life in our own world without preordained answers. Nietzsche's philosophy, while seemingly abstract and dwelling in the realm of grand ideas, offers surprisingly practical tools for navigating the complexities of everyday life. It's time to move from theory to action, to translate these profound insights into concrete strategies that can empower us to live more authentically and meaningfully. Think of the core principles not as lofty philosophical concepts, but as tools in a toolkit, each designed for a specific purpose. The will to power, understood as self-mastery, the Übermensch, envisioned as a continuous process of self-improvement, eternal recurrence, utilized as a powerful decision-making tool, and amor fati, embraced as a mindset for navigating life's inevitable challenges. These are not just abstract ideas to be contemplated. They are practical strategies to be applied. These concepts, honed through rigorous self-reflection, become powerful instruments. They are not meant to reside in the dusty pages of philosophical texts. Their true power lies in the application. You can apply these tools. They're not just for philosophers. They're for anyone seeking a life of purpose. These aren't secrets reserved for an intellectual elite. Let's start with relationships. How often do we find ourselves entangled in power struggles, seeking to dominate or control others, or conversely, feeling dominated and controlled. This is not the Nietzschean will to power. Instead, apply the will to power in your relationships to set healthy boundaries, to communicate your needs and desires effectively, and to cultivate authentic connections based on mutual respect and understanding, not on manipulation or coercion. Consider the example of a couple constantly arguing, each trying to win the argument, each seeking to impose their will on the other. This is a destructive cycle, leading to resentment and disconnection. But what if, instead, they applied the will to power to understand their own needs and motivations, to communicate them clearly and respectfully, and to seek solutions that honored both their individual needs and the needs of the relationship? What if they approached conflict not as a battle to be won, but as an opportunity for growth and deeper understanding? Challenge yourself to apply the eternal recurrence to your relationship choices. Would you choose this relationship, with all its joys and challenges, to be repeated for eternity? If not, what changes need to be made? Now, consider your work or career. Are you simply going through the motions, feeling trapped in a meaningless routine, or are you actively striving for excellence, seeking to make a meaningful contribution, however small? The Übermensch is not about achieving some unattainable ideal of perfection. It's about the process of striving, of constantly pushing yourself to become the best version of yourself in your chosen field. It's about finding opportunities for growth and self-improvement in any work situation, even if it's not your dream job. Think of a student working a part-time job to pay for their education. They could view this job as a mere means to an end, a tedious chore to be endured. Or they could embrace the Übermensch, striving to be the best employee they can be, learning new skills, taking initiative, and finding satisfaction in a job well done. This isn't about external validation. It's about cultivating an internal sense of purpose and accomplishment, regardless of the nature of the work. How can you apply the principle of the Übermensch to your current work situation, finding opportunities for growth and self-improvement, even in seemingly mundane tasks? And what about personal growth? Are you actively cultivating self-awareness, challenging your limiting beliefs, and striving to become the person you aspire to be? Eternal recurrence is a powerful tool for making choices that align with your values. Before making a significant decision, ask yourself, would I be willing to relive this moment, this choice, exactly as it is, for all eternity? If the answer is no, then it's a sign that you may be compromising your values, settling for less than you truly desire. This isn't about avoiding pain or discomfort. It's about choosing a life that is meaningful, even if it's challenging. And this is where many popular self-help approaches fall short. They often focus on superficial techniques for achieving happiness or success, without addressing the deeper questions of meaning and purpose. They encourage positive thinking, but often ignore the reality of suffering. This is a shallow approach. Nietzsche offers something far more profound, amor fati. This isn't about pretending that everything is wonderful. It's about embracing all aspects of life, including the challenges, and finding meaning within them. Think about it. Have you ever noticed that simply thinking positively does not protect you from suffering? What tool is that when faced with intense pain? Finally, consider how you face adversity. Do you crumble in the face of setbacks, or do you see them as opportunities for growth and resilience? Amor fati is the key to cultivating a mindset of strength and perseverance. It's about reframing challenges as opportunities to learn, to adapt, to become stronger. Consider the example of someone who loses their job unexpectedly. They could fall into despair, viewing it as a catastrophic failure. Or they could embrace amor fati, recognizing that this setback, while painful, is also an opportunity to reevaluate their goals, to explore new possibilities, to develop new skills. It's about focusing on what they can control, their response to the situation, rather than dwelling on what they cannot control. It's about finding the lesson, the growth potential, in even the most difficult circumstances. It's a conscious choice to find value in everything. How might your perspective on your current struggles shift if you viewed them not as punishments, but as opportunities to practice amor fati, to cultivate inner strength and resilience? Consistently applying these principles, the will to power as self-mystery, the Übermensch as a model for continuous self-improvement, eternal recurrence as a decision-making tool, and amor fati as a mindset for embracing life's challenges, can lead to a profound transformation. It's about taking radical responsibility for your own life, creating your own meaning, and forging your own values in a world without preordained answers. It's about embracing the freedom and the responsibility that comes with the death of God. But understanding is not enough. Action is required. It's in the consistent, daily application of these principles that true transformation occurs. We've explored Nietzsche's profound insights into the human condition, and now we will continue to bring it together. As we reach the culmination of this exploration into Nietzsche's challenging, yet ultimately empowering, philosophy, it's crucial to synthesize the seemingly disparate threads into a cohesive tapestry of understanding. We've traversed the landscape of the death of God, not as a theological pronouncement, but as a cultural and philosophical observation, the erosion of traditional values and the subsequent crisis of meaning. We've confronted the abyss of nihilism, the seductive yet ultimately destructive allure of meaninglessness. We've redefined the will to power, not as a crude desire for domination, but as the profound drive for self-mystery, the inner strength to overcome our limitations. We've envisioned the Übermensch, not as a superhuman elite, but as a continuous process of self-overcoming, a striving to become the best version of ourselves, accessible to each and every one of us. We've grappled with eternal recurrence, transforming it from a daunting thought experiment into a practical tool for evaluating our life choices and aligning them with our deepest values. And we've embraced amor fati, not as passive resignation, but as a courageous acceptance of life's inevitable challenges, finding meaning even in suffering. All of these are not just isolated ideas, but interconnected tools. Remember the initial questions that launched this exploration. That gnawing sense of disorientation, the feeling of emptiness in a world seemingly devoid of inherent purpose, the persistent search for meaning in the face of existential uncertainty. These are not merely personal struggles. They are the echoes of the death of God, the reverberations of a cultural shift that Nietzsche so presciently identified. They are the universal human condition, amplified in a world where traditional sources of meaning have lost their grip. And this is where Nietzsche's philosophy offers not just a diagnosis, but a prescription, not a lament, but a call to action. The crisis of meaning is not a dead end, it's a starting point. It is precisely in this void, in this absence of preordained answers, that the potential for true freedom emerges. And now we arrive at the ultimate insight, the culmination of our journey. The death of God, while initially disorienting, even terrifying, ultimately empowers us. It removes the shackles of external authority, freeing us to take radical responsibility for creating our own values, for crafting our own meaning, for living authentically in accordance with our own deepest convictions. This is not a burden, it's a liberation. It's the exhilarating, albeit daunting, freedom to become the authors of our own lives, the sculptors of our own souls. It's the recognition that meaning is not found, it's created. It's not bestowed upon us. It's forged through our choices, our actions, our struggles, and our triumphs. This isn't about rejecting all values. It's about consciously choosing them, about creating a value system that resonates with our authentic selves, not one imposed upon us by external forces. The implications of this extend far beyond the realm of personal philosophy. In a world increasingly characterized by uncertainty, division, and the erosion of traditional belief systems, Nietzsche's insights are more relevant than ever. The search for meaning is not a solitary pursuit.